Well, hi there. I like turtles, and I am here today with what is, I think, the most hardcore of all turtles, and that is the alligator snapping turtle. Oh man, look at those jaws. He means business, and he really does mean business. If my hand ends up in those jaws, even though this is a pretty small alligator snapping turtle, it's gonna be horrible. Just absolutely a horrendous day. I'm gonna be honest with you, and this guy, hopefully he doesn't take any offense to this, but the common snapping turtle, a close relative of the alligator snapping turtle, is probably my very favorite turtle. And I love them so much because they're pretty hardcore looking, and they've got the personality of a monitor lizard that's in the water. They're just intelligent, interactive, and they're just fun and interesting. But I will tell you this, the alligator snapping turtle, at least to look at, it's definitely cooler. This, I mean, goodness gracious, that's basically a bolt cutter. And if you stick your hand in there, it'll do the same thing that a bolt cutter would do to your hand. It's just an unbelievable set of jaws they've got. Plus they've got this ridiculous shell. No turtle has a crazier looking shell than this. It's got 3 big spiny ridges down the back of it, and then spikes at the end. They've got a big long tail, like other snapping turtles, but I mean, you know, not like most turtles. They got these powerful beast legs with huge claws. I mean, just, I don't know how a turtle could be any more intense looking. They're just, they're probably designed by like a 13-year-old boy. I'm just not sure how else to describe such a cool thing. Not to mention that tongue that they use as a lure in one of the most cruel surprises in all of nature, when you as a hungry fish go in there and discover that thing wasn't a worm after all, but it was just heinous bait. And this guy, I mean, this turtle here is probably about 20-25 pounds. They get way over 100 pounds, maybe even over 200 pounds. Enormous monster turtles. Frankly, this is a monster. This one, like I said, is a little one. Here at Nerd, where I am today, they have a huge one. Alligator snapping turtles, they are monsters. But the alligator snapping turtle really is, for a reptile that is a monster, one of the most reasonable pet monsters you could get. And so the question is the alligator snapping turtle the best pet monster for you? In order to sort this out, we're gonna have to discuss the alligator snapping turtle based on our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. When it comes to handleability, we give the alligator snapping turtle a score of 3 out of 5. I honestly spent a long time trying to decide what that score should be, because the reality is, for a giant turtle that could bite your hand off, they're actually very easy to handle. But they're a giant turtle that could bite your hand off. So I couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to tell you here. The reality is, especially compared to their cousins, the common snapping turtles, they're very easy to manipulate. One of the big differences between these guys and the common snapping turtles is the length of their neck. Common snapping turtles have one of the longer necks among all turtles, and they can reach more than halfway up over the top of their shell with that mouth, which means when you're going to handle one, unless it is a socialized one, which they can actually become pretty darn friendly. But if it's not a very socialized common snapping turtle, you pretty much only have like the back 40% of the shell with which to hold that turtle. Well, the turtle might weigh 50 pounds, and a 50-pound turtle holding it not dead center is really hard, and if you mess that up, it'll reach right back and it can grab you very quickly. The alligator snapping turtle, on the other hand, has a much shorter neck. Now the jaws and the jaw pressure and what it can do to you with the face is much worse than what you get with a common snapping turtle, so you never want to lose track of what you're doing. But a really nice thing is because that neck is so short, you can actually grab them right here at the very front of the shell, as long as you're careful, right? You can grab them right there and at the back, and then they can't kick you with their legs. And I mean, they're really nice grips. So even in a very, very heavy alligator snapping turtle, if you're strong enough to lift 100, 150 pounds, you can pretty safely pick up a 150, even a 200-pound alligator snapping turtle without getting bitten and without getting clawed by these claws. Now that said, these claws are wicked. They're big and they're sharp. When they get older, the claws will not be quite as razor sharp as they are on this younger turtle, but I mean, they'll scratch you up. It's those jaws, though. It's easy to stay away from the jaws. Turtles are not very flexible unless they got that really long neck, and these guys do not. But man, if you're anything wound up between those jaws, it's gonna be a horrible day. It's gonna be a horrible day. So you gotta be really careful about that. But for an enormous turtle that could bite your hand off, it's not gonna get any easier to handle them than this. I'd like to take just a minute to say thank you to our patrons at Patreon who made this trip out to Nerd possible. It's been incredible. We appreciate you guys so much because it gives us so many opportunities to cover animals like this alligator snapping turtle, which we're actually not allowed to keep in Utah. Gives us an opportunity to show them to you, and gives me an opportunity to live a few of my dreams as well. Love me some alligator snapping turtles. When it comes to care, we give the alligator snapping turtle a score of 4 out of 5. Honestly, once you get them set up properly, the care on these guys is really easy. I mean, really the biggest pain to them is you're gonna need a great big aquarium. They can at times bask. You know, some alligator snapping turtles will get out of the water to bask, so it would be very wise if your aquarium also had a basking area with especially UVA basking bulbs. But especially if you have one that never uses that area, you can almost get away with a fully aquatic setup. They're going to spend most of their lives under the water, and mostly you just need it to be heated and filtered. Keep that water clarity good, cycle the aquarium, do periodic water changes, but that's pretty much it as far as water goes. Then it comes down to just feeding, and these guys can eat a lot of things. They actually have a slightly omnivorous diet, and so they will eat some vegetable matter, some fruits, but a lot of the diet is going to come from meat. And I would recommend whole prey items, but you do need to be a little bit careful. You know, there's a temptation with anything that will eat fish to feed them goldfish, and we've discussed it in other videos, but goldfish are just not a great source of protein, especially as a staple diet for turtles and for other animals. They can eat some rodents, though that's probably not going to be a major part of their diet. Any sort of meat you get them, make sure you treat it. You know, you might need to cook it lightly in the microwave to deal with any pathogens that might be in it. But if you give them a wide variety of meats and also some fruits and vegetables, also prepared turtle diets, they're going to do great. They're going to do great. When it comes to hardiness, we give them a score of 5 out of 5. Most turtles, quite frankly, given proper care, they're just rock solid, and the alligator snapping turtle is no exception to this rule. You give them proper temperatures, proper diet, proper filtration, they're just going to be amazing for you. When it comes to availability, we give the alligator snapping turtle a score of 3 out of 5. The reality is, in the wild, these turtles are not doing very well. Habitat destruction and hunting have really put a lot of pressure on the wild populations of alligator snapping turtles. The great news is there are a lot of people breeding them in captivity, and so even though you probably won't see them in pet stores and things like that, you can absolutely find them online, sometimes at expos. If you're willing to have one shipped to your door, you could probably have an alligator snapping turtle today. When it comes to upfront costs, we give the alligator snapping turtle a score of 3 out of 5. The captive bred baby turtle will be a pretty expensive aquatic turtle. I mean, but when you consider what you're getting, really not that bad. After that, you're pretty much just going to need a really big freshwater aquarium with proper filtration. That's really just about it as far as upfront costs go. They're very simple to set up. And, care of them is really pretty simple. They're really awesome. And, for these reasons, overall, we give them a score of 3.6 out of 5, which for a monster, that's a really high score. The truth is they can make great pets. They can make really great pets. I mean, if you're willing to put in the care for one, they're awesome, and they're super impressive. I mean, there aren't very many giant impressive reptiles like this that are this reasonable to keep. I will tell you the only reason I would say you might not want one, assuming you're willing to put in all that care. It's just that, well, for one thing, it's going to live a really long time. And during all those decades that you're going to have it, it's not going to do very much. These guys spend most of their day in one spot, mouth wide open, wiggling that tongue around, waiting for stuff to swim in their face. And that is what they do all the time. And they're super impressive and really cool. So if you only watch them for 10 minutes, that's awesome, right? But if you watch them for like 10 years, 20 years, or 100 years, they're kind of boring. They're kind of boring compared to other aquatic turtles, which can be a lot more interactive and I think more fun. But if what you want is a really impressive river monster that can live in your house and isn't even that hard to care for, the alligator snapping turtle might just be the best pet reptile for you. And to give you a little bit more feedback on what it's like keeping these beasts, I want to turn over a little bit of time to Kevin McCurley, who keeps this alligator snapping turtle and many others. He's an expert, so listen carefully.
This is truly a grumpy animal that I have to have a lot of respect for. And this is the brute of all snapping turtles. These guys that get to extreme sizes, supposedly over 200 pounds. I have one upstairs that's about 120 pounds. And these can make fantastic pets. Ultimately, these guys will, if you've really committed to doing a good job, you're going to start seeing animals that could be this size in 4 years. They start out as these little cute little innocent looking turtles, and they can get to be these grumpy little brats like this. So this animal right here is very defensive, we're going to call that. So basically this animal has no social graces, and that little mouth right there I would never want to get bit by. That's like no joke. And so these guys are, besides being an active forager or hunter, these guys will also lay there and they'll use their tongue as a lure. And so their mouth, if I look in their mouth, is really dark, but then their tongue is pink. And they'll sit there, with their trap open, sit there and wiggle that tongue and wait for little fish to come along and go for it. So I can tell you a couple things about alligator snapping turtles that people might not know. They eat a lot of fruit. They really seem to like little streams or like open mouths of where a stream meets a pond or whatever. But they'll go in these small waterways and things like grapes. They'll find floating grapes and they're going to ingest these floating grapes. And so it's kind of seems weird that an animal like this would actually include a large amount of its diet is fruit. So whenever it's available, so if you go to Georgia, so in the fall when the grapes are falling into the ponds where it's low enough where these guys could get it, they're going to actively forage on that. But when they get older, one of the big things they eat, other turtles. That mouth is designed to nail anything, and that would also be, sliders and cooters and whatever. A wonderful species. They are still being bred in captivity. There are people that I know that are friends that have large groups of adults, and they will lay their eggs, and they can then supply like the pet trade or the hobbyist trade, and some of those babies are actually exported. What's great about that is we have a captive source of animals that would be free of parasites and other problems, yet alone the negatives of actually taking these animals out of the wild. Because in the wild, these animals are definitely on the decline. For me to go out there and catch one or see one, it wasn't a common thing. They're very, very cryptic. They blend in with everything. And just to be able to catch a couple of these, we catch them and we let them go. It's the enjoyment of doing it. So I often think that for the general public, and if you're going to want to keep a snapping turtle, these are great to look at and they're dramatic and all that. but it's more to look at versus a common or southern snapping turtle where you can look at, but there's a lot of room for interaction without getting bit.
As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.
Turtles look like old men when they're just chilling.
Yeah?
And with his mouth open, just like super angry old man.
Angry old man. He's one of those guys off of the Muppets.
Yeah.
Why don't you sit down? Why don't you sit down and chill out? There you go.
This one is not wonderful. Maybe we'll talk about the wonderful one for a sec. Come here, jerk.
Wiggling that tongue around.